a funny thing happened to me a couple of years ago. I was learning to be a speaker and I was speaking about creativity. I never mentioned the word spirituality once. And my tutor, I said, you know, I don't talk about the fact that I'm spiritual. Do you think I should? Do you think people realize? She said, you don't need to say anything. People just know you're spiritual. And that's what it's like when you have something on an invert point. You don't actually have to say anything or do anything. You don't have to shout it from the rooftops. It just seems to emanate from your very being. So I have my North Node on an invert point in Scorpio. So we've got this ninth house, which is about my spirituality, my personal philosophies, my personal beliefs. Hello, everybody, and welcome to part 10, the last lesson in this Star Wisdom astrology course, and it's being taught by Jupiter, which is the largest planet in our solar system. In fact, it's so large, it's actually bigger than all the other planets, not the sun, of course, put together. And it has a huge electromagnetic field around it too. In fact, they say that it protects the Earth from incoming objects like asteroids and meteorites and things like that, because it's able to repel them from the Earth's gravitational field. So Jupiter is a great protector, and it's so large that it exaggerates everything. It makes everything bigger. So this is my Jupiter hat, which is purple, which is the color of Jupiter. And Jupiter is one of the beneficent planets. In traditional astrology, there's only two, Venus and Jupiter. Jupiter doesn't tend to cause problems until it reacts with something else, which may be causing a problem, and then Jupiter will exaggerate that problem. So Jupiter will make everything bigger, whether that's your waistline or your bank balance. So it has a journey around the sun that takes 12 years. So it's about a year in each sign. So it's like the first of the slower moving planets, and definitely has a global impact. Jupiter is currently in the sign of Gemini, and we can see a huge expansion in all things communication wise, like AI and connecting to each other, more and more apps on our phones and implants under our skin so that we can all be connected, and having our bank cards on our phones and all that sort of thing. And it's like really fast, the changes are just so fast that is going on in the field of communication, which is where Jupiter is right now. So I'm going to share the screen. And Jupiter sits in the neutral zone of the tools planets. There, as you can see, there are two planets there, Mercury and Jupiter. They're both about learning. Mercury is more about book learning, and Jupiter is more about experiential learning. It rules like higher education and learning through experience. Jupiter has a leadership quality, but it's a leadership through leading through experience. It's not like Saturn that has a leadership quality that is just telling you what to do. It's the authoritarian. Jupiter is more about, well, why don't you do something like this and see what you learn from that? So as I said, it's in the neutral zone. So what we're looking at today is quite an intuitive understanding. And Jupiter is all about expansion, growth and expansion. So Jupiter looks a bit like a number 4, the symbol for Jupiter. And it rules the sign of Sagittarius. So Sagittarians, they always want to stretch their boundaries. You know, they're either sports people who are trying to run that little bit faster, or they are travelers who are trying to explore just a bit further, or they're philosophers who are wanting to know more through reading and researching. So it's always about like expanding the boundaries, pushing the boundaries. And of course, once they get to, pushed and pushed and pushed, of course, in the solar system, Jupiter at its external boundary is Saturn that goes, right, stop. There is a limit to what our physical bodies can do sports wise. There will be a limit. We can move it just incrementally, but there is a limit. Travel, so far you can go to the moon, possibly a bit beyond if you can afford to get in a space rocket, but otherwise there is a limit. The planet is limited. There is a limit to how far we can go, but that limit is, we can always stretch it just that little bit further, just that little bit further, and that's what Jupiter's aim is to do. And it rules the 9th house, which is the house of personal philosophy and personal beliefs. So, we're always looking, to stretch our beliefs, to stretch our philosophy, or it's also the house of higher education. It's like, what can I learn that little bit more? How much more can I learn? Particularly through experience, because we can always learn more through experience. And Jupiter is going to teach us about the nodes. You've probably heard about the nodes. Now, these are not planets. These are positions in the solar system, and they arise by the orbit of the sun and the orbit of the moon. They're not quite exactly in alignment with each other. They're just slightly off. And they have 2 points where they cross. So we have the north node, which in traditional times is called the dragon's head, and the south node, which is the dragon's tail. It's these nodal points that create the eclipses. But we're not going to go into eclipses now. We're just looking at the north node and the south node, and particularly the north node, because that is the one that is marked on the chart. In fact, we don't mark the south node on the chart, but it's always bang opposite. And the only time you're really aware of it in the chart is when there is a planet on it, like I have Mars on my south node. And we know that because there is an opposition from the north node to Mars. And the south node is exactly opposite the north node. So therefore, Mars is sitting on the south node in my chart. When we have planets attached to the nodes, usually by sitting on them, like Mars on the south node, or a lot of people have a planet on the north node, it's almost like an anchor. It's like it anchors that end of the nodal axis. And the north node is where we are going. It's our forward direction. And the south node is where we have come from. So Mars on my south node, I was always very curious about this until an astrologer looked at my chart quite a long time ago now, maybe 15 years ago, and said, have you had a lot of men in your life? Now, Mars often represents male energy. And I went, yes, I'd had a lot of relationships with men. And he said, do you feel like sometimes you knew these people already? I went, yeah, sort of. And he said, I think you're finishing off a lot of old relationships from other lifetimes. And I thought, oh, that makes so much sense. because the South Node is what we're bringing in from other life experiences. And so Mars sitting on there, it's like this male energy that I've been bringing in from other life experiences. So the North Node is where we're going, it's where we're heading. There's no sign of the zodiac associated with it, there's no house associated with it. It takes 19 and a half years to go all the way around the zodiac, and it goes backwards. So it's currently in Aries, but is just about to tip into Pisces, in fact, next week. And it will be in Pisces for 18 months. So it takes about 18 months in each sign. So at the time I was born, so everybody who was born a year before me already had North Node in Scorpio, and everybody who was born 6 months after me had North Node in Scorpio. So although the sign that the North Node is in is interesting, it's not the key thing. The key thing is what house it sits in and where in the house does it sit. Does it sit on a cusp? Does it sit in the cardinal zone, the fixed zone, or the mutable zone? And you can see that for me, the North Node sits on the invert point. So my direction forward is a very inner personal thing. It's something I have to work with on the inside. It's not something I can project into the outside world. And the South Node, in my case, is in Taurus and still on the invert point. So the North Node is a little bit like a signpost. So you're going along a road, say you're going along a road, and then it forks. And it's in life, you're going along the road of life and it forks and you've got a decision to make. You know, maybe you've got two choices or more, and you just don't know which choice to make. It's like they both have pros and they both have cons, and you just don't know which decision to make. You always make the decision that is in alignment with the house of the North Node. So for me, my North Node is in the 9th house, which is the house of personal philosophy and spirituality. So for me, my decision should always be based on which of these choices is most aligned with my inner beliefs, my inner spirituality, my inner philosophy. And everybody's going to have their North Node in very different places. I mean, the Scorpio bit, my North Node's in Scorpio, will mean that there's an intensity to it. You know, it's like for me, my spirituality, my personal philosophy is very intense. It's very deep. But it will be completely different for different people. And then finally, I want us to have a little look at the ascendant or the rising sign. So this is what we call the AC. Because in a way, our North Node is directing us to the AC, the ascendant or the rising sign. The ascendant is like where we're born. The point of the ascendant marks the time that we were born. It was what was rising on the eastern horizon at the moment we were born. We need to know the birth time because that gives us the ascendant. But it's also our spiritual goal. It's where we're headed to ultimately. So I have an ascendant in Aquarius. And Aquarius is all about freedom. It's all about community and groups. Remember, it rules the 11th house and it's ruled by Uranus. So it's about being different, eccentric, unusual, about change. It's about being able to access information beyond the realms of my thinking mind. So my North Node, which is always like my choice, is which of these choices is most aligned with my own personal philosophy, my own personal spirituality, my own beliefs. And because it's in the 9th house, which is ruled by Sagittarius, which is also very much about freedom. Sagittarians, they want to be free. They want to be free to travel. They want to be free to explore their sports as far as they can. They want to be free to stretch their mind. Both Sagittarius and Aquarius have this idealization of freedom. So my North Node in the 9th house is very much about my own freedom to believe what is true for me. And ultimately, this is because my goal is about freedom. It's about how can we be as free as we can. It's the whole essence of my life is freedom. And it's not been easy because I have Saturn at the top of my chart, which is about constricting and containing and being responsible. But fortunately, I have Saturn in Sagittarius, which is about freedom. So once I've been able to understand how to use Saturn, and it took me a long time, definitely beyond my Saturn return, then I was able to understand that in order to experience the freedom that I needed, I was going to have to be very well organized and plan it and be very responsible for my actions. So the North Node is very significant. You'll come across people who often only look at the nodal axis. Their whole astrology is based on the nodal axis. When the age point or transits land on the nodal axis, this can be a very significant time in our lives, particularly around our careers. So thank you so much, everybody, for watching. And I wish you all the best and all the growth and all the love for your journey on this Star Wisdom course. And I would like to add one little thing. You've been taught 10 different tools here, and one or two are going to jump out at you as something that you're really interested in, that you can't help but observe when you look at a star map. Start there. Start with those things that you are naturally drawn to, that you go, that there's no effort for you to have to think about or to remember. You just can't help yourself. You're like, I'm absolutely fascinated in this. Start there, because then the rest of it will hang on to that. So if you remember, I said that for me, the age clock is the most significant tool that I use, and everything else fits into that perspective. So thank you again. I love you all, and I can't wait to see how you all get on as astrologers. Do stay in touch.